Good evening. Welcome to the Reloading Podcast here on the Firearms Radio Network. Tonight, we're kind of taking a change in pace from what we've been doing the first for 26 shows. Tonight, we're talking about shot shells. They come in all sorts of different colors, all different sizes. We're going to be talking about 12 gauge tonight. But first, as we always do, let's start off with what you did in Firearms and Reloading tonight. Well, what I did is... because, as most people who tuned in last week know, we had some problems when we were editing or when we were doing the show last week because my computer decided it wanted to not play nice. So I had some video editing to do. Well, what I did while I was video editing is I did some reloading. Unfortunately, I haven't made out to unload those yet, but that'll be later this week. One thing to keep in mind for future is we talked about ladder loads in last week's show, and Jim kind of showed you. What I'm going to be doing is a buddy of mine has a 257 Weatherby Magnum that we're going to go through and we're going to make up a set of ladder loads, and so I'm going to videotape that whole thing and then put that on YouTube from start to finish, from starting with the brass prep and the ladder loads and everything like that, showing you how we figure out the calculations and everything, to actually going to the range and then figuring out what's the sweet spot. So kind of give you an idea, a little more in depth than we were able to last week because of the technical difficulties we had. Jim really wanted to spend a lot of time on that, and unfortunately, because of the problems we had, we didn't get to. So we apologize for that, but we'll be putting an extra video up on YouTube. When that's up, I'll post a link on the Google Plus Reloading Podcast page, the Facebook Reloading Podcast page, and I'll also put a link in the Reloading Room. So once again, sorry about all the problems we had last week, but thanks for hanging with us. And Jim, what'd you do?
Well, as I was just showing you, before we went on the air and just now on the air, I just put up my own version of the ladder loads. Something interesting I noticed in the, I don't know how the velocity data, but something very interesting I noticed. My ladder load started right here at 12 o'clock, right above the white bullseye. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm trying to show you there's a mark in the paper right here at 12 o'clock. That's where I started. That's my 0, 1.5 inches high at 100 yards. But what I noticed was I've got a shift to the shooter's left is what I noticed. The higher the velocity became, the more it shifted to the right. I'm beginning to think the higher the velocity became, the more the twist. It seemed like the twist of the rifling may have caused the bullet impact to move to the right, to the shooter's left.
Definitely could be.
I don't know for sure. But anyway, what you saw here, yeah, it looks sloppy and all that, but what you're seeing here is right here in this square by my finger. I'm trying to, forgive me, I got to do. Yeah, right there, my finger. There's actually 4 shots right there. They are all touching each other. That'll be the load that I actually look for in the ladder load. These are all contiguous. It sort of looks like an upside-down L on the screen.
So what you're going to do is you're going to take those 4, and then you're going to make up maybe a couple more rounds of each to find out which one's the best, or is that kind of like, okay?
Exactly. But the thing is, Mike, I have the data as to what those rounds were. What I'm going to do is I have a plot where I just simply, the one at 12 o'clock, so where I started 1.5 inches above dead center, that will be shot number 1. Well, yep. I can plot all the rest of them vertically. And the shots that are in the upside down L, I don't know what they are right off the top of my head, but I have the data recorded, and those will be the ones, the load that I developed. Whatever they are, the 4 shots are, the top and the bottom will be my maximum and minimum.
Now, a couple of questions to kind of help flesh this out for people. When you're doing that, how do you keep track of which shot is which? Do you take a shot and then mark it on a target, take a shot, mark it on a target? Because obviously you don't want to fire these off rapid fire in the first place because you want to keep the barrel cool. But, I mean, do you walk all the way down to 100 yards and mark the target, or do you just use a spotting scope, or do you wait till you're done?
Well, what I do is what I've been known to do is I've taken an identical target and I actually record. Put a small dot, look through my 60 power spotting scope, record the bullet impact on the second target. It's an
Okay.
identical target, and that's how I plot it. But in this case here, I could just plot it vertically.
Right. So, and the other thing I want to point out on that target, folks, you saw where his center aiming point was, but he didn't want to try and adjust his shot. The key to the ladder load is when you put that rifle in the rest, it stays where you're aiming. You don't change your aim point based on where the first shot goes or the second shot goes. You don't adjust your scope. You don't do anything. You leave it set the way it was when you fired the first shot, and then you keep shooting, regardless of where they are on the paper.
That white dot was my point of aim each and every time. I did not change, even though you could see by everything started going higher and higher. Well, that's because higher and higher because I had more and more powder each and every time. Up at the top, you'll notice there's a small on I believe, Mike, I might be working in reverse, but on the shooter's left, that's over here by my fingers, there's a nice 3-shot group right there, 4-shot group.
Yeah, the target left.
Okay, the target's left. Well, the problem is one of those shots pierced the primer. It's too hot. I'm not going to take that load. And when it pierced the primer, that's absolutely no. We don't take and go with that.
No. And do you want to explain a little more about what piercing the primer actually means? I mean, those of us who have been doing reloading for a while know what it is, but maybe to the novice, they might not know exactly what piercing the primer is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. I'd forgotten about that. Here I am talking in vernacular. Anyway, piercing a primer means the load was just too damned hot. Excuse my language, but it was just too damned hot for safety reasons. Meaning I had too much gunpowder in the cartridge. It's like, I went from a minimum and maximum of published data on my particular gun, and the fact that I'm using Lake City 2004 brass, excuse me, I'm using military brass, which is known to be thicker and thicker walled, less capacity inside the cartridge. And when I do that, and I'm using a near max load, and that shot 19 was near max, was actually just slightly half a grain under max. When shot 19 pierced the primer, I knew I was in trouble. Meaning, I went on to shoot shot 20. It didn't pierce the primer, but I'm not going to go back up that hot again. When you're using military brass as opposed to commercial brass, you're working with a thicker, stronger brass. Military builds their ammunition such that it's reliable. They build it for reliability. They build it for quality. Well, I like military brass, but the point is, max load in commercial brass is an overload in military brass. It's too hot to be safe. So I'm going back to the other lower load that you saw, the upside down L.
Yep. All right. So that kind of gives you a better idea of ladder loads. And like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to actually make a video, too, to put on YouTube that's going to go a little better, show you where we're out at the range, and so on and so forth. So one of the things we're starting in tonight is Shotshell reloading. I don't have as much experience in Shotshell reloading, so what we're going to count on for you folks is we're going to count on a lot of you to add comments, and then what I'm working on doing is getting a couple of people I know that have been doing it a lot longer. I'm working on getting them out here so we can do an episode together. I did a little video with my dad showing him using his Texan. That's something that I'm going to put up on YouTube. I went out to his house and we did some reloading with his Texan that he's got. I have a mech style reloader. I don't know, the reason I say a mech style reloader is as you look, it has the standard mech setup. It does have the mech powder and shot charges on it right now. It's got mech bars in it. Most of the stuff down here says mech. However, there's no indication anywhere on the base or anything that it is actually a mech. So I have sent some pictures off to mech, but I haven't heard back from them yet to see if they can verify that it actually is a mech or not. So until then, we're just going to call it a mech style because we here in the Reloading Podcast believe about honesty and truthfulness. So kind of give you an idea of what a couple of inside shot shells look like. This one here, the green one, is Remington STS. This is one of the top reloading shells. And then next to it, I have one of their Field and Dove loads. So what I wanted to show you, and I got to clean it up a little bit so it looks a little better. Where'd my knives go? So bear with me a second here. What I wanted to do is show you kind of how the thickness looks different between the two shells. The black one, it's still a unibody construction. According to everything I'm finding from other reloading sources and other friends, you can reload them. They just don't hold up as well as the STSs. Some of the recipes I found online do actually include them as everything for Remington. All the STSs, the game and load. There's a couple of different options, but this is the STS. The two big ones in reloading for shot shells, especially if you're loading them for target, are STS and from Remington, and then the Winchester. It used to be the AA's. They still have a AA, but it's not as good as the old ones. And I guess I've just heard, I haven't confirmed, but I guess they've come out with a AAA also that's supposed to be better. As you can see here. Let's see if I can get some more light into that. There we go. Kind of see that there is just a single construction. Let me see if I can do it one at a time if it shows up better. We'll just do the green one. But as you look in here, it's just got a single construction.
You've got a sectional view of that. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what I did is I actually trimmed down some of the hull so you can see in the inside. Here's your crimp on the outside. There is different ratings on that, whether there's a 6-star or an 8-star. This was an 8-star that I cut in half. You'll kind of see that better later. But as you look in, you can see that it's all green plastic in there. Because what it is, it's completely molded shell, and then they just put the brass cap over the top of it. Quite a bit of different construction from your usual fare of metallic cartridges. So, and then this is what they look like whole. And you can see there's 8 points on the star. And on the back side, this one still has the primer in it. Whereas this one, I popped the primer out so you can see all the way through. So, all right. So your main components you need are your powder. Now, once again, we're working with Unique because Unique works with a lot of different things. It works with pistol and shotgun really well. 209 primers. Just like regular primers, they're always fun to get open. So here's 100 pack of 209 primers. And then you've got your machine, and then the expensive part of the program, the shot. Shot has really gone up in price lately. This bag here was about $42, I want to say.
Ow.
No, $45. And that was actually one of the cheaper ones I found. Most of the time, if you're going to order it online, you're looking about $45 to $50. So shot really has gone up in price. Now, what you want, yeah.
That's for a 25-pound bag, correct?
Yes. As little as 5 years ago, it was about a half to a third of that price. So, and what you want to do is have a container to store your shot in. The bags are nice, however, you do have to worry about them falling open easily and making a mess. Trust me, it's not fun to try and clean shot up off the floor. So, as you can see, shot's not magnetic, so there's no easy way to clean that up off the ground. Now what we want to do...
Easily.
Yeah. Now what we want to do is look at our actual reloader here. We've got an S for shot and then a P for powder, and that's what these two separate containers are for. Nice thing about the mech containers is you can actually get caps for them. But more importantly, you can actually fill them without having to take them off. I just took them off to show you. I'm not going to fill them at the current second because we got to do a couple other things first. But that's the nice thing about mech is if you get low, you don't actually have to take them off and try and keep it from spilling to do it. Now, if you do have to take them off, this entire thing flips backwards, providing you have the charge bar in the right spot. If the charge bar is over here, then this flips backwards like that, and you can get it out. Here's the tube for the shot to go down that sits in there, or the powder, depending. It's kind of like a single-stage die or a single-stage reloading press because it does a lot of the same actions in the same spot, or it does two of the same actions. It's got your powder and your primer in the same spot. Now, one of the things you got to do is that's different. It doesn't use dies. What it has is it has a charge bar. And this is what they look like out of. This is a 1 5/8. You look on the end here, as soon as it focuses, you'll see a 302, which is mech's indication that it's a single stage press. And then the 1 5/8 is 1 5/8 ounce charge of shot. So that means every time you throw the lever for loading the shot, it will put a 1 5/8 ounce charge into your shell. Now this one here, this one is, as soon as it clears up, you can see it. Come on. Someday I'll have a better camera.
Yeah. Hold your hand behind it. Yeah. Now it's focused on the palm of your hand.
There we go. Okay, so now you can see down at the bottom it says 1 1/8. So that is 1 1/8 ounce. So this side is where the shot goes through. That's a fixed size. The other side, however, as you'll notice, has got a bevel because it uses bushings. And the bushings are different diameters, which constrict your powder flow. This one here is a 31, and there's a chart, which I'll include in the show notes, to tell you how to figure out what bushing you use for which shot charge. Now this one here, I'm doing a 22.5 or 22.5 on the powder charge, so that correlates to a 33. If you can see,
22.5 grain.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
So 22.5 grains of unique in a 12 gauge shot shell underneath of 1 1/8 of shot.
Yes.
My God, and handgun loaded, so that's a pile of unique.
Yeah.
I think even 44 Magnum only takes 10.8 grains.
Yeah.
Standard.
So it kind of gives you a difference in the amount of powder charge, but you're also talking at how much bigger of a container.
Over double both in the weight of the shot charge and the weight of the powder weight. But at the same time, folks, remember we're talking 12 gauge, which is about 790 at the bore.
Yeah.
So far larger diameter.
You can put a wing screw in here or different styles to make it easier. I just happen to like the flathead screw. I haven't worn it out yet, so it's not a big deal. When the arm is up here, though, this won't move. So what you actually have to do is you have to slide it down and then slide it over. So, because your first charge is going to be your powder, and then you're going to put your, I'll show you how this all works too, but your first charge is going to be your powder, and then the second charge is going to be the shot. So now what we want to do is we want to start filling these. So we'll adjust that up a little bit so y'all can see. And this is one of those things where it's handy to have different stuff around. Using my handy dandy coffee cup. Put my funnel in here. And you'd be amazed at how much just that little coffee cup weighs.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine. Probably 4 or 5 pounds.
Right. Now, the nice thing about these is, like I said, you can flip this, so you can fill them a little fuller if you don't know if you're going to make a whole bunch. So, then put your plug back in. Because, like I said, you can flip this backwards. And then if you needed to, because you got that plug in there, you can actually unscrew it without any spillage. And then flip it back up if you needed to. But so, you know, what some people will do, and I haven't gotten this serious into the shot shell reloading yet, so, but what people will do is they make caps for these bottles. I got this used at a garage sale, so that's kind of why, you know, I don't have those little things. What this is sorry, brain fart, but they make little caps you can screw on here, so you can actually just flip it over, take your bottle off, put your cap on it, and put it on the shelf. Because as you can see on here, well, I don't know if you can see or not, but it's got a shot line and a powder line. So what you can actually do is using a Sharpie, you can label on here, like I'd label here 7.5. You can label here for the powder, whatever powder you're using, so that way you know. First question we'll answer quick from Garth Gelster. His question is, please explain the different types of shot, hard, soft, etc., and why you would use each. What is the best application for each type? Okay, so this is just regular chilled shot. This is just going to be your basic. In a 7.5, more often than not, you're going to use it for just straight target loads, for like trap, skeet, sporting clays. People use 7.5 for dove, but I've never dove hunted, so I can't speak from expert status on that. But from what I've known of other people that do when they load their own shells, they like to use 8s or 9s because you get a little more shot in the pattern, and you're going to use a different style choke. Now, a couple of the other things are going to be your Magnum shot, which is a little harder. That's the one you're going to use for hunting. It's a little harder. It keeps its form better, so when it's going down the barrel and you're running it through a tighter choke, it doesn't deform. What that means, see if I can get just one here, not it rolling all over the place, because it is lead. I'll have to do it against something hard. Bear with me here. It will deform, and so you can actually flatten it. And I don't know if you guys will be able to see this or not. We'll see. Whoa, not anymore. Ha! All right. Normal shot is round, but if you look at this one, if you can see it, you can see the actual groove marks from the screwdriver on the top now. I just put that on there. And so what's going to happen is it goes down the barrel and it goes through the choke. It's going to smash and distort. Well, then what happens is, just like if you, when you're loading metallic cartridges and you're loading lead bullets and you scrape some of them off the side, it affects the trajectory. So instead of having a nice tighter pattern with that lead shot, because you get so many deformed pellets, it's going to start to spread out quicker and it won't stay as well. So you're going to ruin your accuracy and your pellet and your pattern density, which when you're shooting a shotgun, those are your two big things, especially pattern density. Pattern density is huge no matter what you're shooting at. Anything from clay pigeons to geese to whatever, turkeys. Pattern density is the big thing because you want to try and get most of your shot where you're trying to get. The exception to that is doves, where you want to spread that pattern out and cover a bigger area, because doves are a small target and move fast. So that's why you use the Magnum shot versus just the regular lead chilled for hunting. Now, there are two other things, and I'm sure some of you who are professional reloaders are sitting there going, well, you got to use steel, you got to use steel, you got to use steel. Yes. When you're hunting on any sort of federal reserve, or you're hunting any sort of waterfowl or migratory bird that falls under the regulations, you have to use steel shot. You can check with the local DNR to find out specifically where you're hunting, if you have to use steel shot or not, and what you're hunting for. If you're hunting for geese or ducks, guaranteed. Steel shot or some other non-toxic shot. The other non-toxic shots out there, there's probably the most common one for years was heavy shot, and that's like a bismuth and tin mix, I think. Excuse me just a second. And the problem with steel steel is light. Steel also is hard. So it's harder on the barrel, harder on the choke. In fact, you can't use the same full choke. And what a choke is, let's backpedal a little bit here, with your shotgun. Just like for the powder charges here, where we've got the different size bushings to restrict the powder flow, with your shotguns, you have what they call a choke. On older, it's actually part of the barrel, where they actually added a little more metal to the barrel, probably about an inch or two in from the muzzle, to constrict the pattern as it's flying out. On your newer shotguns, they actually have screw-in tubes that you can screw in and change the constriction, or how small the barrel gets, before the shot leaves. Now, the reason you do this is, depending on where you're shooting, you want to try and constrict that. You need to constrict that shot down tighter. Especially if you're shooting, say, turkey or geese or duck, where you're going to be shooting out to a longer distance, you want to constrict that really tight. With it, turkey's probably about the tightest choke, because of the fact that you have such a small target to aim at. With a turkey, you're just literally aiming at their head. That's it. Geese and ducks, it's a little wider open, but usually you're just trying for their head also. But geese and ducks is kind of really just throwing shot out there in the general direction and aiming, versus turkey, where you really have to aim more. Yeah.
Speaking of turkey, when we were on the range today, we saw a couple toms. They were out browsing around and whatever, and the toms were probably 75 to 100 yards away at the time. But it's just interesting that you're talking about shooting at a small target with a shotgun. I would bet you that tom's head couldn't have been any more than this measurement here, which is 2.5 inches. And you know, that's a long shot on it. With a shotgun, 40 yards is a long shot.
Right. Yeah, turkey loads usually, and I say usually because there are exceptions to every rule, but usually a 3-inch load out of a 12 gauge with a turkey, you're looking at a maximum effective yardage of about 40 to 50 yards. And yeah, a turkey's head isn't really that big. They're really not that big. And as we turkey hunters like to say, if they could smell, you'd never get them. That's probably their one weakness, is they can't smell, so they don't wind. So you don't have to worry about winding like deer. But a turkey's eyesight is about 8 times magnification. So you got to try and get them in close. And now there are states where you can hunt with a rifle. I don't know which ones is it off the top of my head. I wish Wisconsin was one of them, because it'd make it a little easier, but then it would be shooting and not hunting. So, but anyway, I digress. So we're talking about choke tubes, and you want to constrict it or expand it depending. Now, if you're firing slugs, and eventually in the show we will get into reloading slugs, just not now because I'm not set up to cast slugs, so that'll be a long time coming, sorry. But unless somebody has a slug casting machine and they want to send it, I'll be more than happy to put it to use. But so you determine your load on what you're going to use it for. Now, this I'm just loading up for trap, so it's just going to be a basic 7.5, just a basic wad. Like metallic cartridge loading, there is still recipes like metallic cartridge loading, although even more so. It's very important you stick to your recipes. It's very important you do not go over the max. You can go under a little bit, but you do not want to go over, because unlike a metallic cartridge, this isn't going to take a heck of a lot of abuse. This is going to blow apart, and then it separates, and what this happens is, if you're lucky, this doesn't come flying back with your bolt and blow your shotgun apart. If you go over your powder charge in a shotgun, it's a lot more dangerous than it is in a metallic cartridge, because you don't have any room for error in the shotgun because of the construction of the shell. There's nothing in this shell that's going to take any of that extra abuse, whereas in the brass it will absorb some of that blow sometimes, but this isn't going to take anything. This is just going to blow apart and then blow your shotgun apart. So anyway, enough about the safety aspect at that point in time. So what you want to do is you want to figure out what powder you're going to use, what shot you're going to use, and then what you do is you go and you find out what bushing you need to use, and you're going to figure out based on your powder, and you're going to need to know what wad, because there's all these different wads, and depending on what wad you're using determines how much powder you're going to put in, determines what shell you're going to use, and how much of a charge you can use. So, Garth also asked another question, which I honestly do not have an answer for, and it's what's your view on the aftermarket universal charge bars with the mechs? Both these bars I have are mech, so I don't honestly have a response. I've not used any of the aftermarket bars. My understanding is just like a lot of other stuff. You got to watch what you're doing, because some of them are made to exact specs, some of them aren't. So, but what the wad is this little plastic piece right here. And yeah.
Now, forgive me for being a stickler for out of felt, and that what you're actually holding is called a shot cup, more correct?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to get to. These are your modern day wads, and they call it a shot shell cup and wad combination. When you look at the actual bag, they are labeled as wads, but like Jim is saying, original wads were made out of felt or cotton, sometimes paper, depending on what they had available, and all it was is just a barrier that you would put in between the powder and the shot so they didn't mix. Modern advances, they've gotten a little more scientific. This is just your basic trap wad. You get into different wads, and there are all sorts of different fancies, depending on how they're designed, what the compression is here, what the design of the cup is here. Even the pedals are designed differently. So you have to match your wads to your shells, because it does make a difference. It's like comparing powder and brass and bullets. You can't use a .224 bullet, .224 bullet in a .308 case. It'll fall through. Just like you can't use a .308 bullet in a .223 case, because it won't fit. If you don't have the right wad for the right shot, for the right hull you're using, and that's what these are called, is these are called hulls. So if you ever hear somebody say pick up your hulls, that's what they're called. When they're empty, they're just a hull. If you don't have the right combination, then what will happen is either the wad won't actually fit, you won't be able to get all your shot in there, or you won't be able to get it crimped shut. Or you can get it crimped shut with too much room and then have other problems like that also. So now, kind of talked about some of the basics. So now what I want to do is I actually want to put some powder in here. And just like the shot, I'm not going to fill it all the way up, because I'm not going to be using it all. If I was using a lot, if I was loading a lot, then I probably would, but I'm not. I'm just going to load a few for demonstration purposes. Now, just so you know, the light that's above me is LED, so I don't have to worry about any sort of heat with the powder. But that's something to think of when you're talking about your reloading area. Like, I've got this light here. Normally I wouldn't have it on because I have enough light to reload with. This is more for the camera purposes so you can see. But if you're using an incandescent bulb and you're pouring powder, the powder flies up a little bit. You could get the powder to burn up just from the bulb, because the bulb puts out a lot of heat. So that's another thing you want to think about that you don't really think about normally. The other thing, make sure your area is kind of clean, not all cluttered up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the wads there because I need those for later. I have a bucket that these go in, and I don't know where I put it. Well, that's no fun. So
Let's see my reloading bench. It's a mess.
Ah, there's my bucket. Yeah, but you have like 3 times the space, so I don't want to hear it.
Oh my God. You'll pay for that, Michael.
You can't get blood from a rock. All right.
No,
So,
but you stone.
yeah, you can get blood from a turnip, though. All right. So get most of your stuff out of the way. If you're gonna do like I did and put your shot in a plastic, make sure it's a good, solid, sturdy one, because otherwise you'll go to set it, pick it up one of these times, and the plastic will have broken down and fallen apart. All right. So now what we're going to do is maybe move a little closer so you guys can see a little more of the important stuff. Okay, so we've got our shot in here. We got our powder in here. I'll be honest. Supposedly this is setting depth of some sort. I've honestly never used it. It really. So the other thing you'll notice is some of these are actually adjustable. Let's see if I can show you here. This one is actually set up. Most of the newer ones are actually set up so you can do 2 3/4 or 3-inch. Some of the new ones you'll get are actually for 3.5 also. So down in here is a couple of little screw holes. On the back side is a bolt. And so that bolt adjusts how high it sits. Not the plate itself, because the plate's actually part, so you can't, but actually how high the rest of this sits off of. It spaces the ram here. So that way you can adjust your height for your shells. So this one here has a fancy dancy primer feed. I'm missing one of the pieces for it. Like I said, I got it at a garage sale. I'm missing one of the pieces for it, so I honestly don't use it. It's one of those things that I just had it sitting on here so you can kind of see what it looks like. But otherwise, usually I take it off. So just because I don't need it, so I'm not going to use it. There is an extra chain that I'm missing to adjust it, so, and I just haven't bothered to get around to doing it because I don't really load enough to where I need to worry about being that fast. So, and it doesn't want to play nice today. There. Okay, so that comes off like that. That comes in handy if you're doing a lot of reloading, because then you don't have to set the primer down all the time. So what we've got here is we've got 5 stations. This is station 1. Station 1, there's a pin here, and I don't know if you can see it or not, so. I'll show you quick. Give you the grand tour. Okay, so here's station 1. Here's your decapping pin, just like you have on a regular reloader. Here's your sizer for sizing your hull. Yes, hulls still need to be resized. Next up is your priming station. Here's the feeder tube, which would drop the primer down, and it'd fall down into here. Then you'd put your shell on top and prime it. Then you've got your dual station. So the shell sits like this. Your first one down is your powder, and then you would slap the bar while you're bringing it back up, and then it would bring down the, you'd set your wad here. It'll push the wad down and then put shot in it. And then you've got your pre-crimp and your final crimp. So some people don't use the pre-crimp. I found it's a little more helpful for me because I'm still not extremely perfect at the crimping. So, but what you want to do, usually it's boxes of 25. For most, and you just kind of have your holes sitting up, and you want to try and be, like I said, neat and orderly. So you're going to have your holes lined up nice and sitting like that. See if I can get a look at that. No. Yeah, you can kind of see, maybe. Nope. Anyway. Yeah. Get your holes lined up and you get them all nice and neat. Some people will put them over here, so we'll put them there. You want to make them so they're easy to see, and also you want to make sure that they're easy to distinguish, so you don't grab a hole you've already charged and then try and recharge it, or try and deprime it when it's a loaded hull already. So, and then keep your wads handy. And if you want to be serious, you can sit there and you can actually take the time to count out every one. You know, some people will make sure that they've only got the set amount on here of every time. I just kind of put them out there, and if I need more, I'll grab more, and if I've got extra, I just put them back where they came from. So first step, slide it onto the decapping pin, pull your ram down, give it that little pop, and it shoots out your primer. So now you've got your old 209 primer. Okay. And you've got your hull, which doesn't have a primer in anymore. Now, one of the big things with reloading shot shells is you don't clean them. You know, with brass, you're going to be cleaning it, you know, whatever style you decide to do it with. With hulls, you don't. So then the next step, take your primer, and here's the new one. This one you can see has got a seal over the end, no dimple, and you take and you set that down in the center there. Take your hull, and this fits tight. So then what you do is you take this down, and then it presses your primer in. Ta-da! So next, I've got it set on powder. I'm going to take it down. But what happened is I put the powder in after. So what I actually need to do before I do that is you're actually going to need to slide it over a little bit. And sometimes what happens when you tighten this back up, that bar doesn't sit right. So what I actually need to do is I need to get, now see what I did there is I actually just filled this with shot because I forgot to charge the powder bar first. So, and that's one of those things you do from time to time. What you can do is you can actually pour the shot into your hand and check it. So, and what I'll do is I'll actually set this off to the side and deal with it later, because you don't want to have dirty shot in your shot shell, just because you get debris in there and it can disform it and so on and so forth. So, okay, so now I got the powder charged, so I'll bring that down and it'll charge the shell. And then what I'll do is I'll take my wad, this slides down, put the wad in like that, and then what I'll do is slap this over, and then put it back, and then it'll charge the shot. So now as I pull it out, you can see the shot inside the shell. Next, I'll slide it over to the pre-crimp, and I'll run that down. And it puts a starting the form of a crimp on there. And then I'll slide it over. And finish it off. And usually it'll look pretty good. Occasionally you'll get it where it doesn't form real right, and that's just because of the older hulls don't form right all the time, some of the issues. So that's how that works. And then it's just starting the whole process over again. Pop your primer out. It's a lot like using a single stage. It's a lot of monotonous stuff, and you just got to make sure you keep paying attention. Now, this time it didn't set the primer because it didn't go down far enough. So that's one of the things you can have happen if you don't pay attention to what you're doing. You really got to push down on that, just like you would like normally priming if you're using a press to prime it with. And you do want to check. The nice thing about a single stage, especially for your beginning reloaders, and even though this has 5 stations, it's a single stage press. The nice thing about the single stage press, as soon as it comes back into focus, is you're still only doing one thing at a time. All right, so that doesn't want to play nice. So bear with me a second here. I'm going to put it back on my original tripod. It's a little lower. It'll give us a different angle. So, and what a lot of people will do once you get good at it is actually have 4 or 5 shells sitting on this thing at one time. Yes, I'm a Packer fan. Yes, I'm disappointed over today's game. No, I will not hate them. I'll still keep rooting for them. But even though it's got 5 stations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it doesn't automatically move it to the next station. You actually have to move it to the next station. So that's why it's called a single stage. And so what you'll get with some people is they'll actually have they'll have 4 or 5 shells like this. So they'll actually, every time it pulls it down, it does with every single one of them. And then, you can just keep going like that. Now, I'll show you how that works. So first you would deprime it. And obviously when you're starting out, it's going to be a little slower. So you're going to deprime, and then you're going to prime it. Okay. Then you're going to move it over here, and you're going to slide your powder charge over. That's not supposed to do that. Oh, well, that's cute. So what we've had here is a case of the primer didn't seat, so now I've got powder all over the place. So, not sure why it didn't seat, but it didn't. So what you want to do then, if you have a case like that, is check your hull and see if the primer just drops in. Sometimes you'll get a case where the primer's missized, or sometimes you get a case where the hull's missized. If the hull's missized, well, it's garbage. Because obviously you see as the powder mess that I now have, that's not going to work very well. So just like metallic cartridges, you have issues that can pop up. And make sure you keep your old primers separate from the new ones. Kind of throw them away. Jim, wake up.
Thank you.
Haha. Well, that's strange. Okay, so one of the things I'm noticing here is some of these primers may not be fitting. So, but also when you go to press it, it's a different setup. So double check, see if it presses. So now it's sealed, not going to come out. Oh, so I lied. It's going to come out. All right. So, unfortunately, I got these holes with, so it may be a case of they've been reloaded before. And sometimes when they're reloaded, you do get a just like in a metallic cartridge, you get a point where it wears, and then you won't get the primers to seat. So, and that looks like the case here. So, you look inside. I can light it up. You can kind of see. You see the plastic mixed in there. Maybe not. Yeah. So, yeah, some of these have been shot before, so sometimes when you get some of these hulls, they don't necessarily always wear up here, but you will get that primer pocket worn and stretched. Maybe a case of somebody, whoever had it before, loaded them a little hot, or whatever the case may be. So that's kind of the issue. Also, the other issue is maybe these primers aren't necessarily all exactly sized to specific size they need to be. So you get that as an issue also. Because that can be a problem too. So just for whatever reason, that one just decided not to. Now the problem I'm going to have here again is as soon as I put this down, it's going to throw shot. So, because I already threw the powder charge, so then I'll slide this back over and you'll hear the shot go down. So that's why it's handy to have your cup laying off to the side so you can dump your mistakes into. Now what I want to do is I actually want to put that down. And when you're doing this, every time you throw the lever down to actually put shot or powder in, now I want to put powder, so I actually have to slide it over and it'll drop the powder. When I let it up, put my wad back in, and now I'm going to push this down. It'll push the wad into the hull, and then I slide it back over and it'll put the shot in there.
So it doesn't change between dropping powder and dropping shot automatically. You do everything.
Right. Yeah, it's completely manual. So you have to move the shell every time. Every time you want to do something. Yeah, you move the hull every time.
Okay.
Now the nice thing is, because I already dropped the shot out of here, I can leave it there and do all the other different stations, and it's not going to continue to throw powder and throw shot. So if, in case somebody's wondering that. All right. And here's a note from Garth Gelster. He says, just a note, not all shotgun primers are not the same size, diameter. So one, they are loaded with a larger primer. So when they are loaded with larger primers, smaller primers will be loose. Now, see, I wasn't aware that they were all actually different size. I thought 209 primers were 209 primers. So there you go. You know, just like in metallic cartridge, just because you think you know everything doesn't mean you know everything. Just another example of pay attention to what you're doing and make sure you follow the rules. I'm thinking with this particular case, though, this is ones that we've used for a while. It's not one of the older brands. It's not one of the newer brands. So what I'm thinking with this particular instance is because they are slightly older, maybe they aren't all the same size. Because as we know in metallic cartridge reloading, quality control's come a long way in the ammunition making business in the last 20 years. So if you get some of the older ones, they may not always be the same size. So I'm thinking that's what I'm running across in this. Like I said, I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. I'm only doing a couple here. So next time when we do the next week, I'll actually have, when you look up your recipes, it'll actually list specific primers to use. So coming next week, I should have the other primers also for the 20 gauge. And then what I'll also do is at another point in time when we get a little more down the road, I'll actually go through and show you how to do the whole 5 steps all in the same shot. So, but that's a basic. Now, one of the important things to notice on this is it does say non-mercuric, non-erosive, non-corrosive. That's what you want to pay attention to when you're picking out your primers to make sure you're not getting the corrosive primers where you have to worry about cleaning it. These are made by Fiacci. I don't even know how old these are. I want to say they're probably about 20 years old, but like most ammunition, as long as they're kept well, just like ammunition, as long as they're kept well and they're kept in a dry, cool, a reasonably cool environment, they last just like metallic cartridges do. So now with cleaning up the powder, there's a couple of different options you can use. What I personally do is I have a vac right here underneath my bench, and that's all it's for, is it's for reloading. It doesn't get used for anything else. So all it ever gets used for is sucking up powder. So what I'll do is I'll get all my other stuff out of the way. And this is an important step because you need to know, if you have a problem, how to clean it up. The reason it's only for powder is because once you get other stuff in there, depending on what you vacuum up, you could vacuum up something that's hazardous. And you don't want to do that. Because if you get something that's in there that's hazardous and you vacuum it up, well, then you could possibly create a spark and create problems. That's why it's important to have just your dedicated vacuum. The other thing you can do with the, you probably can't hear me, but
I'm thinking Mike has muted his microphone so that he doesn't pick up the shop vac so much.
oh, actually I didn't, but I figured it was probably loud so it couldn't hear me. But now that I got all the powder cleaned up, what I can do is, like I said earlier, pull the lever down a little bit, flip this over, pinch my finger for fun, and unscrew the bottles. And what you want to make sure you do before you unscrew the bottles, make sure that cap's on tight.
Yeah. You mean the plug?
Yep. Make sure that plug's on tight. And now, so I've got my powder. I can just take my powder bottle, turn it upside down, and bada bing. And just
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You're emptying your powder bottle?
Yeah.
Oh, you're done reloading.
Yeah, so I'm showing cleanup too.
Okay.
So just like that, all good. And then you can take your shot. My shot container's down here, so dump the shot out.
I think these are very valuable skills to have.
Yeah, especially in SHTF moments.
Amen to survival tech skills.
So,
yeah, you've got to have the right tools and all that.
Yeah, like I picked this up for $25 at a garage sale. $25, gang. Just kind of keep your eye out. There are a lot of people that reloading really took off after World War II. It really, really took off after World War II. So you get a lot of people that are of that age of, you know, older 70s, early 80s, especially maybe that aren't hunting anymore, aren't shooting anymore, and they're not going to be passing it down to their kids or their grandkids because their kids or grandkids aren't interested. So what you can do is pay attention to Craigslist or different places, and you can catch deals. Also, the Reloading Room has a separate page for buying and selling. There's people that are selling stuff on there. Say, you know, they started out learning on a press like this, and then they get serious, and they want to go to a Mac 9000, which is a fully automatic, well, not a fully automatic, but a multi-stage press. So every time you pull the lever, it shifts around just like a multi-stage press in the regular setup. So just like in metallic cartridges, there's a lot of different options you can do. There's a lot of different tweaks that come about. There's a lot of different knowledge that you needed to have, and you need to pay, just like metallic, you need to pay attention. Because as I showed earlier, this plastic ain't very thick. So, you know, most of your walls of your metallic cartridges, some of them are thicker than this, some of them aren't. However, if you have a shot shell go off badly, unlike a brass cartridge where it might contain that blast, the shot shell is not going to stop anything. So you really got to pay attention, be careful, and just like we always preach, safety, safety, safety. Like I said, next week we're going to kind of show you a 20 gauge on the Lee Load-All 2, kind of give you a different example. The Lee Load-All 2, as I was saying when I was unboxing it, was $50. This press brand new, well, current version of it anyway, is quite a bit more. Let me see here, and I can tell you. Give me just a minute here. So, Jim, you think you're going to get into shot shell reloading?
I have a Punch's Warren shot shell press up in the barn, and I have everything I need. I have all the components. I just simply haven't force myself to take the time now. I've
Yeah.
never been all that interested in shotgunning.
One of the big reasons you want to have that ability and have that is given the fact that, if you do have an SHTF moment, shotguns are a lot more handy for closer range, and especially for trying to get food, because a lot of your food you're going to be able to see is probably going to be birds more than animals. So you may want that extra availability of the shot shell.
I'll go.
Like I said, also you can load slugs at some point in time when I get a casting set up, or if I get a hands on some slugs, then we'll go through and show you that also, and that's a different setup. But for slugs, you can sometimes, depending on there is also a couple different options. There's low brass and high brass. High brass is going to be your higher power shot. They're gonna be a little higher speed, especially some of your steel loads are going to be a high brass. Now, this actually isn't always made out of brass, just so you know. Actually, most of the time now it's a steel covered or a nickel covered with brass. So it's not full brass anymore. Now, the other thing you'll get, and I didn't have any handy to show you, is they actually used to make these out of paper. And yes, they were actually reloadable too. There are some people out there still reloading the paper ones, as opposed to the 8-star crimp or the 6-star crimp like this. It actually rolls down, and then there's a cap that goes over the end of it. So that's kind of a couple of the different things. It'd be essentially like a little wad, just a paper disc that would sit on the top to hold everything in. So the current version on Amazon is $205 for a Mech 600. Or no, sorry, not a Mech 600. A Mech 600 Junior Mark V is now $205. There are some other options as low as $175 if you do a little looking on Amazon, but most of them are around that. If you want to buy bottles, which a lot of people do, the bottles are about $22, $23. So, give you an idea, the Mech 9000G Progressive is $606. So, even that's not bad compared to some of your progressive presses in metallic. But kind of gives you an idea. And like I said, we're just getting into covering the basics of shot shell like we did with metallic, and then we're going to go back into metallic for a while and come back to shot shell a little later, kind of flip back and forth from time to time. So
that's pretty much the curse of being an educator. You know that, Mike.
Yes.
You wind up going over the same material over and over, over and over, and over and over again.
But is it a curse or is it a blessing? That's the real question.
It can be both.
Yes. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank Garth for your couple questions and for your tips and hints. Like I said, I don't have nearly as much time into shot shell as I do into metallic, so my knowledge base is still growing. I couldn't get together with my one friend that's been doing it for a long time with all sorts of different stuff. They load slugs and they load shot shell for pretty much everything. He doesn't really buy shot shells anymore. He loads everything. So unfortunately, his schedule is going to keep him busy for a while, but eventually we'll hopefully be able to meet up with him and be able to get him on the show. So, but once again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you are looking to get into shot shell reloading or for any of your other reloading needs, if you're going to get anything from Amazon, anything at all, doesn't have to be shooting related or anything. If you buy anything off Amazon, please, we ask you go to reloadingpodcast.com, click on the Amazon link, or there's also a Brownells and a Sinclair link on there. It doesn't cost you all anything extra, but it does help the show because they have an affiliate link program where they kick back a little bit from each. It's kind of like we're an advertiser for them, so they kick back a little bit to the network and give us a little extra help. So, Jim, anything to add? Questions?
I have a couple ideas as to who might be willing to take and tune in to the podcast. It might be better to discuss that off the air.
Okay.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Garth Kelser. He's a friend of mine. I consider him a personal friend, and I just wanted to say thanks for tuning in, Garth.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh, he tagged me in a post. Okay, so he actually posted in the reloading room, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes. He actually gave us a little extra info, and he says, here's an interesting chart for you to show the variations in primers. For example, once reloading Rio primers, you may have loose pockets for other primers, and it does show the different diameters. Anywhere from, looks like the smallest is going to be Federals and Nobels at, oh no, sorry, smallest is Remington's at 241.
Winchester,
And,
236.
oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, so 236 all the way up to 245. And
wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a huge difference. So,
but that also goes to show the flexibility of the plastic case, or
yeah,
whatever it is.
Yeah.
At the base, versatility and flexibility of the plastic base.
Right. So basically, and when you look up your load data, I'll have a link for the load data that I use for tonight. When you look up that load data, it'll actually specify different primers, just like it does for metallic. But as we've learned tonight, unlike with metallic, where the primer may or may not affect the load, because the primers are the large magnum, large rifle is the same size as large rifle is, and Jim printed that out so you all can see. So as you can see, it's kind of a little fuzzy, but Jim's camera should tune in just a second. But as you can see, A is up at the top. So A is your overall. Bring it down just a bit, Jim. You can see the C, the D, and the B, but the A is the one that's on the top. So that's the actual diameter where it's gonna fit into the actual shot shell, into the primer pocket. So there is variations, and like I said, I don't claim to know everything, so I really appreciate all the extra help and the extra input. If I knew everything, then I'd have a huge fat studio and really be doing nice shows. But because I'd have all sorts of toys. But so we're always willing to take advice and take help. Like I said, we appreciate everybody tunes in, and wow, the thought train just went flying off the rails. I'm screwed. I am so screwed when I get old. I'm gonna be one of those guys. I'm gonna be one of those guys wandering around Walmart going, "How did I get here? What am I doing?"
I fell asleep in the middle of the podcast, and Mike harassing me, but you know what? I haven't even started harassing you yet, Michael.
Well, I'm waiting. So. Just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank for you all the support and all the listening we get. Do want to thank everybody who does give us input. It's great that we have this awesome community, that we have such a base of knowledge. And speaking of base of knowledge, if you have a question and you want to know the answer, and we don't cover it on the podcast, send us a note. We'll cover it. But more importantly, if it's an answer you need right away, go to the Reloading Room on Facebook. Just a huge wealth of knowledge, and literally everybody in there there will be somebody in there that has the answer to your question. It may take them a couple minutes to find the link. A lot of us pay a lot of attention to it. Some people don't have as much time to spend on, so and it's a no bullying zone. Jim and the admin really work hard to make sure it's a friendly, helpful place to be. So newbies to experienced people can come in and ask that question they think is stupid when it's not, and you won't get told it's a stupid question. So just want to thank Jim for having the idea of starting that a long time ago. And honestly, I don't give Jim enough credit, because it was his podcast originally that inspired me to do this one. So. And I'm really blessed to have Jim along. Normally we have Jason, but unfortunately Jason couldn't make it tonight, so we'll give him some crap about that later.
You bet. No, but thing is, Mike, I thank you for the kudos and the credit for that. I was doing the podcast earlier, but I did it by myself, folks. And I won't lie to you, Mike has made this podcasting thing so much easier. We've done 26 consecutive podcasts. I did podcasting for 6 months by myself, and I had a terrible time with it. But Mike has just made it so much easier. It's a whole lot more fun. I mean, two guys just basically just bouncing around off each other. Well, three guys sometimes. Of course, too, about that Jason character. He's a little shady.
He is from California, Stan.
Oh my God, we're not going to go into politics.
So, yeah, reloading should be fun. It's a great sport and a great hobby, and it has benefits. I mean, come on. Part of the whole process is you have to go unload the shells or unload the cartridges so you can reload them. Now, what's not fun about that? If you don't think shooting firearms is fun, then we need to have a long talk.
Mike, I freely admit to shooting ammunition that I'd made up just so I could reload it again.
Been there, done that.
Amen.
Oh, yeah. So, well, everybody, we thank you for tuning in for another week. You guys have a great week. If you have comments, questions, concerns, you just want to spout off smart aleck comments at us, the show notes you can find on the reloadingpodcast.com. It'll have all the links to our Google Plus and Facebook pages and stuff like that. Or we're all on Facebook, so you can private message us. We're all on Google Plus, so you can private message us there. Send us an email, reloading@firearmsradio.tv. Leave us an iTunes review. Leave us a Stitcher review. If you think we suck, tell us why we think we suck, and let us know. So if you think we're great, tell us why you think we're great. We promise not to get too big of a head. We do have a small space to work in.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
I actually got a couple private messages on Cast Bullets. One guy was actually asking me, am I the Jim Fleming of the Reloading Podcast? Yay! People paying attention.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Yep, everyone, you have a great night, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.